Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Season 1, Episode 5, Everybody Wants to Be My Enemy. Episode 2 of Act 2. So, I want to tell you a story, and I swear this is true. Literally last night, I was kind of half dreaming. You don't know when you're not, like, quite asleep. And I actually had a dream about how I would do these, like if I could just do this the way I wanted to, right? If I had resources and access and technology and power, how would I actually do these kind of streams and analyze these kind of shows? And I was sitting down and thinking, because what I do is I'd want to watch the episode first, taking my notes as I go. And then I would want to have it here, or actually, I haven't thought about this more accurately, I'd have it here. I'd have the show playing over there. We got chat up here, we got me right here. Sit and discuss the specifics of hows, the whys, the whats, and the wherefores. And actually try to literally show you some of the depths and layers and details. Of course, none of that's super possible, so you get to live with my ugly mug. I do apologize. Nice shot of the distance. Shows how far they are from the city proper and gives us our first real shot of terrain that isn't just the waters or the cityscape. Some really, really good shots here, ironically, by Caitlin. Really good shots of Caitlin shooting. Got it, Body Punk. I'm sorry. There's a specific shot. They repeat it twice, where Caitlin's got the gun and she pulls it into position, and we have this wonderful long shot of the barrel right there, right, going down it, which really drags our attention to her. Well, that's a good question, Lord Harrimont. The answer is probably. I know a lot of people think I'm overreacting with things, or don't understand, no offense, Lord Harrimont, exactly how much of a, God damn it. Exactly how much of a minefield it is putting stuff up on YouTube, especially nowadays. You have to understand that a misstep could lead to me literally having my channel shut down, Lord Harrimont. That's not hyperbole, that's not exaggeration, and that's something I'd rather avoid, if that's okay. Twitch does the exact same thing. Twitch can shut me down at any time for any reason. I have no particular desire to give them more ammunition with which to consider doing so. So, yes, is the answer to your question. I'd rather not risk that. You know what I mean? And that is the harsh truth of it. Some things are probably less risky than others. Honestly, Arcane is the kind of show that I probably am in less risk of, because Riot tends to be okay. At least nowadays, now that they've started cleaning up their act a little bit. If I was to try and cover, say, Andor or Mandalorian, I guarantee you Disney would come down like a ton of bricks on my face, right? So it's kind of that's kind of a range. So yeah, Tangled, nah, that's not happening. Thank you, Baron, very much for the sub. I've put that towards the Kirby block, Yakuza block, and Buckshot Roulette. I'll come back to you, Eclectic. Let me get through this episode first. Put this up here so I don't forget it. No, I want the correct link, please. Thank you. Where the hell are my notes? Really good shots. Really good stance. Proper posture. Proper tone. Proper presentation. Some really, really good stuff here. And I also really like how Caitlin was keeping up with Grayson. Caitlin, of course, accuses her of that. She's got the trophy, but she's barely even looking at it. Just, ugh. It finally goes up. Did my parents pay you to let me win? And Grayson's like, what? And after a bit of back and forth, Grayson finally admits that she did let her win, but not because her parents paid her to. She just thought she deserved it. That's an interesting take, and I'm actually with Grayson on this. Any kid who can actually keep up with Grayson in this kind of a thing, yeah. It also says a lot about the kind of lifestyle Caitlin has been living in. Now, we've already seen that several times, but brushstrokes and all that, right? And yeah, I've been told to quote it. We'll see what happens when it eventually goes live to YouTube in a few months. So this is all just whatever. ISAT. I don't even know what that is, Eclectic. Sorry. Yeah, Caitlin very, very much wants to get out of her parents' shadow, and she reminds me a lot of Vel. I just keep seeing parallels to Andor in this show. It's kind of weird. I'm pretty sure Arcane predates Andor, but I'm not even sure about that. So I guess I shouldn't say I'm pretty sure. I am mildly sure, barely sure. I have no certainty whatsoever. We cut to this thing where we have this wonderful shot of the city transposed against the prison, and Grayson actually says, "What are you shooting for?" Cut to Caitlin down in the prison talking with Vi. Interesting tidbit here in that we don't get an answer to that question. We can infer from ourselves what Caitlin's shooting for, but we don't really know what Caitlin's in for or after. Because you could say, well, she's trying to do a good job, but that's not a motivation. That's a goal. Doing a good job is the goal. The motive is behind that, right? So we still haven't actually specifically seen why it is that Caitlin is the way she is. We can infer a couple of things. At least part of it is probably because of the fact that she's sick of her frickin' parents. She's also part of the upper aristocracy. She is the daughter of a counselor, which are the most corrupt and most well-off people of all of them. So it would make sense if she is sufficiently sick of seeing that kind of crap that she just wants to push back against it, even if she's not even sure exactly how or where or why or what. So we have some good banter between her and Vi. There's no record of you or your crime, so Vi was put in for nothing and kept in here for 6 to 7 years for nothing. Cool. Lots of very quiet, quick, dirty exposition. Vi is clearly tensing up and ready for a fight that obviously isn't coming to us. Caitlin, meanwhile, is trying very, very hard to do everything that she can to not be disgusted by this person she's seeing, this criminal. But also, there's clearly a confusion that's there. Like, it's there in her posture. Like, she's very tense, obviously. She's very proper. But in her face, there's just this, huh? And finally, there's this part where Vi flat out says, could you just send in whoever so I can get on with my night? Caitlin then visibly steps over the red line, shows the platform, shows the book thing, her notebook. Vi looks at it, lunges for it, physical recoil. How do you know this thing? What? No. I asked first. Trying to reestablish control of the situation. Trying not to show how much she's scared of Vi, because she is. And yeah, of course, Vi is the one who saw the monkey, specifically. It's like, okay. And there's this wonderful bit where Vi is so focused on the monkey, she gives away the biggest piece of evidence she actually knows. Like, the biggest thing that she could say as a witness is, everyone works for Silco. How do you not know that? Where did you find this? Like, she doesn't even pause in her sentence. It's like someone like, I need to know who's behind it all. Well, of course it's the Kingpin. Who else would it be? It's Fisk, for God's sakes. Now, where'd you get this? Like, just immediately focusing back into the thing that's actually important to her. And Caitlin is still just processing this all, like, trying to figure out where this is going. Yeah, by the way, is Silco the industrialist? I caught that as well. So Caitlin walks away, and both of them have this thing, you're just assholes in a fancy uniform, you're just scum. But Caitlin is still chewing on that. She's not an idiot. And she's not just going to buy the party line, so she's thinking. So she finally decides, okay. Goes and smacks down the paper. Counselor Talus. And notice the guard, by the way, recognizes the name Talus. I didn't know he'd been main counselor. Yeah, as of today, actually. The guard even looks at her like, okay. Like, he doesn't even really care, but he's still in on the news enough. Even this random dude in this random post, who probably hates his job, is still aware of who Talus is. Of course he is. Talus is probably a household name at this point. Yeah, I noticed the species thing. His ears were different noticeably, and his jaw structure was a little bit different. He reminded me of what you normally typify as an ogre. Yeah, he's an Edison, which is funny when you think about it. Hopefully Jace isn't going to turn out to be an Edison. We'll see as we keep going, because he's certainly taking some steps towards that direction in this episode. Oh, she obviously forged the signature. See, I was going to say Victor's the Tesla, but again, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. There's actually, would you believe, Savacom, there's actually really specific guidelines about that. No, I'm dead serious. It's actually something... we could get to the sex scene when we get there, but all I need to say is that they've just... Most shows, movies, and games have really, really specific things that are then qualified as rated M or rated high teen or rated Peggy 18 or whatever the hell they used based on the country. And it's all basically the same thing, and it's all nonsense. If you show a visible nipple or genitalia, that's over the line. If they're wearing a patch of tape right here and there's a bush in front of them, that's fine. It's kind of silly, and a lot of works over a lot of years have made fun of this. Austin Powers made fun of this, if you remember that. And remember, that's not a recent movie. Anyways. So... Caitlin... It took me a moment, too, TSB, because I was thinking of the violence. It says something about me. Caitlin smacks down the thing and is like, "Wah! I need this person out." Okay. Caitlin's face... Normally, I would praise the facial acting here. Caitlin's face as she releases Vi is legitimately amazing. She is so scared, trying to keep herself under control, shoving herself through it anyways, has no idea if she's making the right call. The parallels between her and Cyril continue. I hope she doesn't go quite down Cyril's path, because... Oh, they say beating very clearly. I honestly don't think Vi would have allowed the other thing. So... Well, of course it's easy to get a prisoner release. Have you been paying attention to the politics and the bureaucracy of this place? This place is trash. I'm sorry. This place is barely functional. Like, Piltover is a fancy Mos Eisley, for God's sakes. So, we see a funeral for the enforcers. And can I just say, it's actually really delightful how terrible of a speaker Marcus is. Did you pay attention to his speech? Because it was really, really bad. Very, very generic. Nothing specific to any of the individuals who died. Nothing personal to Marcus himself. Nothing that actually hits any specific thematic or emotional beats, such as trying to be somber or uplifting. It's just, it sucks that people died. And that's it, right? And he's not even... I'm not making fun of the actor, to be very clear. I'm making fun of Marcus. Marcus clearly is not the kind of person who... Yeah, no, he's Archer. For those of you familiar with Enterprise, he's Archer. He just does not know how to give speeches. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. But it makes sense, because Marcus feels very much like he has been shoved into a post he hates. I'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, I need to write something down. Sorry, real quick. One moment. Yeah, Grayson could probably have done something clear here, although Grayson also has that voice going for her. Marcus also takes his daughter over to see Grayson's grave. And she says, "Who is this, Daddy?" And his response, "A good woman." That's interesting. That is very interesting. And you could see how Marcus, who is a corrupt officer, let's be very clear about this, definitely has some layers going to him. Definitely has some stuff going on here where he's just still trying to process everything that's going on around him. It isn't quite terrible. Cut to Silco. Marcus meeting Silco, actually. Marcus is livid with Silco and also terrified. Did you catch that? Everything about his body language and his voice acting is, "Grr, you're stupid, you did this, you screwed up." And then there's his leg. Did you catch his leg? I can't physically do it, but his leg's doing this thing. Trembling, quietly. He's been able to control almost all of himself, except for his leg, which is trembling in fear. Twitching. Oh, 100% Brownjacker. No question. Marcus is still terrible. It just doesn't... We talked about this back in Andor. You can have a person who's terrible and still make them an engaging and interesting character, right? I gave that speech like 3 separate times during the Andor series. Silco completely dominates this entire scene, continuing to be a very good crime lord. He's calm, relaxed. When he's yelled at, he responds with even tones. He doesn't allow himself to be pulled down to the level of the person who's yelling at him. Remember that. It's a recurring theme through almost the entire thing. He also is smoking. Goes out of his way to chop off a cigar to have a puff when most people down here literally need breathers. We actually saw that earlier. Or later. During one of the establishing shots. There's also this wonderful little tidbit where he bothers to give a bunch of money to Marcus. Now, I find that doubly interesting because it showcases in a very quiet way how much he actually is worried about this situation. For the families. From an anonymous citizen. Now, Marcus could just go take that money and run, but he kind of isn't going to, is he? That money probably really is going to go to the families and probably is really intended for them. After all, this was all by accident. So, we're trying to smooth things over here. Just calm the waters a little bit. So here, have a bag of money to go try and smooth over things, to make Marcus feel better about the accidental deaths, and to make those people have a little bit of an easier lives coping with said deaths. Silco is just smoothing. Yeah, Silco actually didn't want these deaths. In fact, he was pretty pissed about it, if you remember. But he can't say that, can he? You can't be that honest when you're a crime lord. So he acts the smooth, suave person who's on top of things, as if it was always part of the plan. Here you go. But in reality, this is actually him adapting. He's rolling with the punches. Good morning, Evo. So, we cut to Jace, who's such an idiot. I love him. I love him so much. I really do. Jace is looking into the books and immediately starts noticing discrepancies, which, yeah, I mean, Jace hasn't been bought and paid for yet. This really is Gotham. Someone said that earlier. Whoever said that, you hit the nail on the head. He's just... he is so effortlessly and easily making enemies. And I know, obviously we know that because that's going to come up later. But even in this scene, my notes actually say, yep, there he is making enemies. Yeah, he's really bad at playing a pro tip, I hate to get into accounting for the second show in a row. It's not my fault I keep covering good shows. What do you want from me? But if you go to open up the books, and the discrepancies are immediately self-apparent and obvious, and go back for years, then you should probably close that book and walk away and pretend you never saw it. Because if the corruption is that obvious that no one's trying to hide it, then you're not going to benefit by bringing it to light. Yeah, maybe you... Marcus even thought it says, maybe you'd like to consult the other counselors first. Yeah, unless you've got something real on your side. That's true, Eclectic. If you have something real on your side, you can get away with that. Jace does not. He really doesn't. Jace... I said this earlier, the moment at which Jace was critical to the benefit and to the point where other people were sufficiently invested in him to go to bat for him, we've passed that moment. The only person who's, people, there are two. The only two people who are sufficiently invested in Jace individually right now are Victor, out of desperation, and Mel, because she's playing at her own long-term games. That's it. Jace is a nobody, really. Again, I don't mean that as an insult. Quite the contrary. Remember, the only reason that Jace is even a counselor is because that is Mel's play. Oh, I actually did forget about Heimerdinger. I'm going to continue doing that. So, there's this wonderful bit where Victor actually says, soon? There are people who need our help now, Jace. Making his overall approach there very obvious. Jace, of course, pushes against Marcus. Marcus has a reaction to that. They have this whole conversation. Victor's cough has escalated to blood. But he also sees the stones react to him, and I caught immediately that it was the blood that they reacted to. Meanwhile, do I think Victor doesn't care for Jace as a friend? I'm not sure. Victor's a cold fish, and he is very, very driven. Jinx is still talking to her dolls, and we see that the releasing the magical energy continues to hit the trauma button for her, which of course it freaking does. No shocks there. The editing in this scene is so good, I feel silly for saying the editing is so good in this scene. This is also when Vi does some extremely top-notch parkour in a wonderfully cut spot where we have some Yoshi drums going on, actually, where the high-paced music is playing while we cut to Vi. I keep wanting to call her V. And then whenever we cut back to Caitlyn, it's the same song, but they remove some of the instruments from it. Very, 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 very good stuff. Caitlyn is, of course, wearing a skirt. I noticed the grandpa. Vi's probably been wanting to get out and stretch for a while now. There's also a great scene. She did successfully follow her. There's a great scene where some thugs try to intimidate Vi by surrounding her, getting in her personal space, getting really up close to her. And Vi's like, "Oh, nice jacket." And the way that the guy reacts to it is fantastic, because the thug's behavior and perspective is very clearly, you know, "Hey, I'm gonna rob you." And the person's reaction is, "Oh, nice jacket," with zero fear or reaction, which makes the guy gotta go, "Wait, what?" So she, of course, beats the ever-living snot out of them off camera. This cuts to a terrifying idea. I think I was trying to figure out what word to use there. Terrifying, I think, works. Oh, no, I think Vi was exaggerating Savicom's. Remember, Powder wasn't actually that good at parkour. But, of course, Vi has had 6 years to think about little else. And trust me, that's a thing. We actually saw that in StarCraft 2 between Raynor and Kerrigan. He's another example. So we cut to Victor, who's talking about his theory that the Arcane speaks through the mages. Now, they kind of rush over this scene, and they just kind of brush past it. But let me really zoom in the camera for 1 second, because what he just said was that there is something talking to the world through the mages, as if the mages are the tools of the thing to affect the world. Now, I don't know too much about the greater body of lore of this setting, but that implies all it needs to. Now, it is still a theory at this point, of course, but... Anyways... Yeah, yes. I mean, honestly, that's true in most settings. If something is trying to talk to you through magic in most settings, nope. And yes, the whole scene, Jace is looking at himself in the mirror, trying to get himself set up for his next thing. Victor is looking at the work because that's all he cares about. Victor is getting more and more desperate. Of course he is. He's up to the blood phase of the cough. There's also this wonderful bit where Jace does actually walk over to him and say, "Are you sure this is safe?" And Victor's response is, "Of course not." And what I love most about that is Victor says it so casually and normally that, of course it's not safe. That's what they've been doing for 6 years, right? That's what they did that started all this. Why would this be safe? Like, he almost says it like Jace is joking, but Jace's reaction is... Then we cut to a scene I actually had to stop watching. It's the only scene in this show so far I had to stop watching, because it was just too gross. Vi eating. I just had a small blip just now, Bionic. I don't know if that's on my end or if that's on Twitch's end, but I did lose 1,482 frames just now. So yeah, I'm just going to skip over this scene if that's okay. Alright, so moving on. Powder's face continues to be devoid. Actually, if I could say one other thing before we move on from the gross scene. Do you remember when I agreed to play Resident Evil 2 Remake on camera? For any of you who were actually there when I started it. Because I started it with a very large proviso. I said, I'm only going to be willing to do this if I don't hit over the line, if I don't go over the gross point. If I go over the gross point, I'm going to shut down the game. Do you know what the grossest scene in the entirety of Resident Evil 2 Remake was for me? Because I bet you do, if you've either played the game or you watched my own stream of it. Yeah, it's the eating scene at the very beginning. There's this truck driver eating a burger. And it's exactly as gross as you're probably imagining right now. And it is the grossest thing in the entire game. I'm not actually exaggerating or joking. It was the only time where I was just, And then we went back to, you know, like monsters and people with rotting flesh. Anyways, Powder's face continues to be devoid. I read too fast. She's still a very, very good shot, but the disconnect in her personality and her perspective is very real. You can actually vibe that there's just parts of her brain that are not actually connecting to each other at all. This is a good time to mention her hair is amazing. They do a lot with her hair, animation-wise, but on the one hand, she clearly doesn't care about her hair because she just lets it grow out to this ludicrous extent. Like, it comes down to her frickin' feet, for God's sakes. But on the other hand, she also goes to the length to braid the whole thing. Now, I know you don't have to redo and redo and redo a braid. You set it in a braid and you leave it there for days or weeks or months. I do understand how that works. But the braids are pretty well done, and they also have bracers along the braids. And yeah, I was actually going to bring that up as well. The braids come down to her feet, which, anybody who braided your hair knows, means that your actual hair is even longer. So then we see an extremely well-animated sequence, which, once again, I feel silly for just saying it like that, where she's fighting the punch-out machine that Vi fought. And lots of cutting back and forth between her and Vi and her memories. And finally, at the end of it, she shows one of the only expressions she's shown other than emptiness or heh, which is she looks pleased with herself until she looks up at the score chart and she's still second. Still got second place. And that pleasedness goes away immediately and she just takes out her gun and shoots the damn thing. Immediate contrast between this and the violin performance. Am I just reviewing Andor again? Is that what this is? Can we just... Okay, so we cut to the violin performance. I have so much to say about this scene that I'm going to feel silly for saying it. So, almost all of the counselors and other wealthy and rich people are up in the box seats. Watching the performance? Actually, no. They're not watching the performance at all. They're talking with each other, enjoying their drink, or engaging in their own particular things. They don't give a crap about the performance. The performance is backdrop. It's over there, just kind of thing. Just doing its own thing, right? The crowd is loving the performance. The camera goes out of its way to show that Heimerdinger is down there, actually enjoying the music. I'll come back to that in just a second. Jace then finds out that, as Mel comes in, I mean, it's a good scene, Talmarid, but the blood dripping down the lips was a little bit on the nose. Mel comes in and informs Jace that by actually doing his job, he has successfully made himself the enemy of everybody. Yeah, it tracks. That's exactly what would happen here. Like, none of this is surprising. Mel, as usual, is playing for keeps here and effectively strong-arms Jace in having to play at politics. In fact, there's this really good sequence where old corrupt lady walks in and is saying, yes, hi, everything's fine, except I had some enforcers at my door this morning. And just very, very clearly, And then moves back to talking to Mel, and Mel smooths everything over. And there's this wonderful bit where Mel actually insists that Jace prefers to negotiate further trade deals and arrangements in person, and yet Jace spends almost the entire conversation not saying anything. Mel is the one actually giving the aforementioned in-person interview. And Mel just kind of sits there and completely controls the conversation while Jace thinks about it. Meanwhile, Jace, and we keep cutting to Jace as we hear Mel in the background. What she's done is actually very brilliant. I've done this in real life. Mel has put Jace on the spotlight, but given him time to process it. In other words, what a more inexperienced politician would do is they would say, "Oh yes, Jace, weren't you just telling me about this?" And then immediately direct the conversation to Jace. But no, Mel gives Jace time to process. Instead, she directs Old Corrupt Lady right to her, over here. Jace is over there. You look at me. I'm the one you're dealing with now. Yes, he wants to deal with people in person, and we've got these other things, and I'm just going to kind of start talking about things. I'm going to start presenting things, and you're going to understand things, and don't worry. This is just the kind of thing that can smooth her. And she just kind of busy talks for a minute, giving Jace time to process and decide what he's going to say. Cut to Jace over here, who's freaking the hell out, watching the thing, watching the storm happen. I've said this before, there's nothing wrong with doing the obvious overt thing if you're doing it well. And both Andor and Arcane both pull out this exact same trick. Because this is very obvious symbolism here, but I'm with it. Jace is freaking out, watching the storm, trying to process, trying to deal with this, listening to Mel. Mel's giving him time so he can do this processing. Collects himself. Turns around. Yes, of course. I was just thinking about the Hex Tech Research Initiative and how we could renegotiate certain perks for people who are invested in that thing. After all, anybody who does such an investment will be first in line to reap any benefits from the industry, or whatever, however the hell he says it. And she looks at him for a moment, processes, and then smiles. Probably the first actual smile she's given since she walks in. Shakes his hand, glad-handing. Jace can play the game. He just isn't really fond of doing so. By now, the performance has reached the tumultuous, stormy part of the thing, and Jace goes and starts glad-handing all of the different counselors in the background, smoothing things over, and the entire time, Heimerdinger, who I've already pointed out is enjoying the music, his eyes are literally closed. Heimerdinger is literally doing this. Just really getting into the performance. Of course he is. He's here for the music, after all, and, in case I didn't make this point clear, he's down there in the audience. Heimerdinger is probably the single most wealthy and affluent person in this entire city and has power and potential to do whatever he wants to. But he's down there, just enjoying the music. So not only is he more of the people than most of the other than all of the other counselors, not only is he actually here for the music and not part of the political backdealings, but he's also completely blind to the political reality that is surrounding him. 1, 2, 3. You're out. I'm curious how much longer he's going to stay in his job. Great scene. Great scene. It's possible he knows it all and doesn't care. He is pretty old, after all. It's also possible he's just not a part of that life. There's an interesting thing where fiction touches on this, but this is a real life thing as well, where people will not notice how good they have it, and therefore their perspective gets a little bit skewed as a result of that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of a really good example that isn't specifically a spoiler, because this is usually a spoiler trope. But yeah, the Piltovians in general are rather privileged. And Heimerdinger is someone who is probably... The vibe I get from him, and this is pure personal, the vibe I get from him is, since he has already been through something that we know was called the Mage Wars, which we have seen only tiny tidbits of, but we understand absolutely terrified this man, he's probably just trying to enjoy the peace that he's got, right? It may not be a great peace, but it is at least better than that, right? It's better than the Clone Wars. Oh, shoot, there it is. Why is Andor so similar to Arcane? A friend of mine and I were talking just last night. I'm going to derail the conversation for just a second. Think about the really, really, really good works you enjoy. Okay? Shows, books, movies, games. How many of them aren't dark? Because I don't know why I'm saying my friend, it was Pax. Pax and I were talking about this. And we came up with a grand total of 0. We couldn't think of a single work that we consider to be one of the true greats that wasn't dark. Star Trek is not always dark. What's the best Star Trek show? Not counting New Trek. The answer is Deep Space Nine. What is Deep Space Nine most well known for? How about Babylon 5? Or Farscape? How about Andor? We just talked about that one. The Wire. Several people are saying MLP. You know what makes MLP so damn good? How dark it is. Oh, don't mistake me. It's very positive and uplifting, but it is also extremely dark. It is actually a more mature show than most shows are that aren't cartoons about ponies. Clone Wars? Yeah. We just covered Clone Wars. Lord of the Rings? Star Wars trilogy? Hell, Empire Strikes Back is the darkest of the movies by far. Clone Wars didn't start dark, and neither did Deep Space Nine. But you get my point, right? Like, what really pushes that into high quality is when they start to get more mature with it, when they're willing to tackle real topics, mature topics, proper topics, and they're willing to do so in a fashion I can only refer to as dark. Because, yeah, the Zeldas. That's actually another great example. Final Fantasy? Have you played FF6? But yeah, taking the setting seriously. That's important. Taking it seriously and treating it as if it's more real, if that makes any sense. Because let's cut back to Andor for a second. Andor is shockingly dark. I almost vetoed Andor because of how dark it is. And yet Andor is, at its very fundamental core, about 2 major themes. Hope and fulfilled hope. For everything awful that happens in Andor, there is always a rejoinder to finish that sentence. It never ends on a bleak note. Not once. And I think, for me personally, that's what really pushes certain specific things above and beyond, right? Because you could say, oh, well, obviously the answer is just to have everything be dark and therefore you'll have good storytelling. As I've made fun of for many years, there are plenty of works in games, shows, movies, and books where it's just dark and it's actually pretty crap, right? Torture porn, as some people refer to it as, or just tragedy whinging, or whatever you want to call that, right? It's just food for thought, because he and I were discussing this last night, and it was fascinating. I've been thinking about that for a while, Lord Harriman, because I get your point completely. I think the problem is there is no definition of dark. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. I bet you if I asked everyone in chat right now, what does dark storytelling mean, I would get 50 different answers. So you are correct. I probably should be more particular with my terminology. The irony is I don't like using the word mature because that has its own connotations, right? If I say MLP has mature storytelling, you're going to look at me weird because you're going to think porn, because that's what the word mature is usually used for. Misused, but still used. That's a good point, Savakam. The first TMNT movie, the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, is a pretty dark film. It's good. Food for thought. Maybe sincere. I don't know. That's something I'll chew on, Lord Hammer, because I do agree with you. I just use the word dark because, yeah, Zootopia. That is a shockingly dark film. That is a film about all kinds of wonderfully dark topics. I love that film to death. And again, I hate to keep pulling this back to My Little Pony, but we're talking about television. Dragging this all the way back to... I'm going to have to, Bionic Punk. Dragging this back to My Little Pony. My Little Pony has absolutely no problem discussing things like emotional instability or mental disability. Obviously, suicide is one of the hot buttons you can go to, but even something as fundamental as trying to understand how to properly enjoy something without ostracizing someone else, or themes of not properly fitting in and the depths that can lead you to, or not feeling like it's worth it to keep bothering on the day-to-day basis. Like, this is the kind of thing that MLP covers. Yeah, Starlight's entire arc is a redemption arc. A proper redemption arc with that one blip. Gaslighting is something covered by MLP. Back to the Future has some dark stuff in it. That's true. It's messed up, but in a good way, right? I don't know, I'm saying that wrong. So don't mistake me. I'm not saying that everything has to be the grim, endless darkness at the center of my soul. No, parents. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's just interesting how the overwhelming majority of extremely good, like the upper crust of what we'd call good, tends to be mature, or whatever word we'll come up with. We need to workshop that at some point. Because it might literally just be coincidence. Like that's what Pax and I were discussing last night. This was literally what Pax and I were discussing. It could be coincidence. It could just be maybe the people who are the really, really talented teams who really want to put out the best works possible. That's the stuff they like to make. I don't know. This could just be a thing. I don't know. There's the old saying that trauma breeds quality, or however the hell that goes. You know, the best artists are the ones who have suffered. That kind of a thing. It's entirely possible that the people who make these stories just have a story to tell. You can't tell me a lot of the stuff we've covered, especially with frickin' Andor, let's bring that right into focus, wasn't coming from personal, real-life experience from both Gilroy and Diego Luna. Right? The least dark work I love? Oh, I'd have to think about that. I'd have to really think about that. So maybe that's all that is. Maybe there is no connection point here because, and to kind of tie things into the episode, I know this is a weird way to pull it on and we're skipping ahead a little bit, but you know how Victor is constantly trying to figure out what the hell he's doing wrong with regards to his new Hextech thing and can't figure it out. And he knows there's a pattern there. He knows this should be working and it's not. That's a very, very common thing. It's a very human thing because we see things and we can tell patterns. And it's like, this has to be the thing. What isn't working? Why? It's because we're literally missing information. I don't know why dark works tend to be so damn good. And again, it's entirely possible that it's the other way around, that good works just tend to be dark. I don't know. It's just something that was bouncing around in my head. Speaking of dark storytelling, Vi takes Caitlin to a brothel, which is exactly as overt and humorous as it sounds, because I love this. You might think, oh, this is the dark, gritty thing. No, this is the humor section. I'm dead serious. This is the comedy breather section. Vi rather overtly flirts with Caitlin. It's just, yeah, there's the gimp suit yordle, just, oh my god, this whole section is just, it's the brothel from Dragon Age Origins, right? Right? Yes, worlds were moved. It was a magical time for everyone. I'm not going to ignore the masked figures. There's a lot of masks in this episode, although there's something else that I caught about this episode, which I'm kind of building up to a little bit. Oh, totally ditching Caitlyn. 100%. You notice Vi had absolutely no intention to follow through on Caitlyn's thing because Vi only cares about one thing. And it's the one thing that's had her attention since she's been on screen. She cares about powder. She's not even really after Silco, excuse me. All she really cares about is powder. This cuts to Marcus. Kept his blood coin as a little memento. And then there's this bit where Silco says, make yourself the martyr you've always seen yourself as. And then he blows it all up. Oh my god. Yeah, no, he was just imagining himself. For just a second, I thought he did it. That'd be a hell of a shocker, wouldn't it? There goes Silco. There goes Marcus. Giant explosion. Down in the Undercity. Be a hell of a status change thing right there. Just, oh my god. Nope. Marcus is in too deep. I do want to mention something else, though, because one of the most terrifyingly effective ways to demonstrate power is by deliberately putting yourself at someone else's mercy. You've probably seen fiction do this. Fiction actually doesn't do this very often. Ironically, there is one other bit of fiction I can point to that does this semi-frequently. Batman. The Joker has this thing where he will pretty regularly put himself at someone else's mercy to demonstrate how strong he is. Actually, yeah, Star Wars Episode 3 did this exact same thing. It's a whole thing, right? It's a whole idea. Because the whole point is, I am not afraid of you. And I'm going to demonstrate that. Here you go, here's the gun. Point at my head. And the important part is to just remain completely calm. Normal. Is there anything else? Now, yeah, I noticed that Silco noticed Marcus wants to do, and then didn't do. This then immediately cuts to Marcus leaving, and the mask falls off immediately. Silco has been wearing a mask pretty much this entire time, and he just, just like there's this huge release of tension and energy, and you can see how much he is maintaining the facade of the crime lord. And the fact that it's a facade, that's dangerous, because with someone like that, you kind of need to be actually in power, to actually be in position. And it's clear that Silco is not. He is floundering here pretty hard. It makes him more interesting and more believable as a character. And it also brings him down a few notches, which I think is actually for the show's betterment. He also then is talking... You won't shoot me. He's talking about how Powder, excuse me, Jinx. I need to start changing my name about that. Jinx is saying, I can't do it. I can't figure it out. Give it to the doctor or something like that. Give it to someone else. I can't figure it out. And his response is, you're the only one I can trust with this. Her response is, I keep seeing them. I can't do it. I keep seeing them. Okay. So yeah, first of all, I noticed the mention of the doctor. So did the doctor guy survive? That'll be interesting to look back into. And second of all, he is absolutely faltering. I agree, Evo. Silco is 100% faltering. Fear haunts us all. Cut back to Vi, who's getting some information from the mistress? I can't remember. There's actually a proper term for a woman who runs a brothel. I can't think of the name right now. Forgive me. But it's the woman we saw in the first arc as well. Is it Madam? Or Madame? I can't remember. Either way, she's trying to get some information from her. And she's clearly being quiet about things. And there's clearly some shame. There's even this bit where Vi says, oh, thanks, I owe you one. And her response is, it's nothing. Meanwhile, Jace continues to be extraordinarily naive. My father put hammers in the hands of the people. And we built all this. I don't even know where to start with dissecting that sentence. I really don't. It's a great line. But it says so much about him in one sentence. Just, wow. Yeah, which people? What people? How? Where? When? Were you the one who started that? When did your factory get pushed up? Yeah, which it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And then, of course, what does he follow through that on? Think about what people could build if we gave them magic. She's trying to weaponize the stable monocrystal. She's trying to figure out how to use and stabilize the monocrystal so that Silco can have an edge on the overworld. So there's this thing. I love Jace. There's this thing. She probably didn't, Sabacon. She's honestly just kind of flailing. But we'll get to the other thing in a moment, because we're going to continue forward on that. How many of you have ever seen something, I know at least one of you has in chat right now, where let's say I'm a writer. I know that's a shocking thing. You're gonna have to work with me. And let's say I read a book. I call it Shadows of the Empire, and I write a line in the book that says, "And then, because of the fact that the kitten got scritches, as a result of that, everyone was happy forever and ever. The end." And that's, of course, my opinion as a writer, is that scritching cats leads to good things. And as a consequence of this, I can then look at this book and look at this work of fiction that I've crafted and written and say, this is now proof that if you scratch cats, that things will get better for people. You know the trope I'm talking about. It's a disturbingly common one in real life. Now, I'm using fiction as a safe way to discuss this, but what people also tend to use for this is anything that isn't, like, proven, anything that isn't demonstrably true, right? Maybe there's a saying. I rant about this one all the time. How many of you hear someone say, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and then treat that as if that's absolute fact? Or there's only two things that are true in the universe, death and taxes, and then treat that as if it's absolute fact. It's a really common tendency. I had this tendency too. I will freely admit it. I had to push myself out of this when I was younger. We have a tendency to look at these kind of sayings or stories or books or concepts and think, that's the truth. And then it gets worse, because then we use that as the baseline, as the groundwork, for then doing something else, assuming that this is true and then building off of that. Which brings me to Jace. My father put hammers in the hands of the people. Uh-huh. And so his big goal is to put magic in the hands of the people. You idiot. Like, I'm sorry, Jace. What? Because this is exactly what he's done. He's constructed a false ground line here. He's what's the word I'm looking for? Bedrock? No, that's not the right word. What do you put on a foundation? He's constructed a fake foundation. And now he thinks, cool, now that this foundation is here, I will build on top of it. I look forward to seeing how badly this goes. Then Mel finally... Damn it, Bionic. Yeah, and then Bioshock happens. Then Mel finally makes her move. I've been waiting for her to make the move on him for a while. Here's an interesting question for you, and we don't have an answer as of this point in time. Is Mel interested in the fun, that is to say sex? Is she actually romantically connected to Jace at all? Is this purely a friendship thing? Or is this purely business? Also, none of these are mutually exclusive, so there could be any kind of crossover here. Interesting to think about, because like I said, she's probably been waiting to make this move for a while. If you asked me, if you put a gun to me, my head right now, I would say that there's probably a combination of legitimate physical attraction, sex, and business. She's obviously in bed with him, you know what I mean. She's obviously politically in bed with him and has been investing into him for several years now. So, that's my thinking. If there's anything more than that, we'll see. This, of course, is immediately contrasted with Victor's assistant, Miss Young, who makes a very obvious play. Would you walk home with me? We can hold hands and... No. Victor, of course, either doesn't notice or doesn't care, immediately shuts it down and goes back to work. There's also this wonderful bit where Miss Young says, there's always tomorrow, right? Well, no, actually. That's right. No premarital hand-holding. Unacceptable. He doesn't say the words out loud, but the words, why isn't this working, is all over his body language. This is what I referenced earlier. He's just missing a piece of the puzzle. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to do it. And as he loses it, he actually physically demonstrates himself, which causes him to have another convulsion. And blood goes out into the device, and the literal note I wrote down in my notes is just, what in God's name is that? Because we have just made something that's now composed of arcane runes and blood. If that doesn't scream bad idea, then you and I need to have a chat, and I got a bridge to sell you. No, don't tell me. I want to see where they're going with this. This could go in a lot of directions, and none of them are good. Silco takes Powder to the spot where he was drowned. puts himself below the water. Baptism. Kind of literally. He even talks about it as if he was born again. It's actually funny in its own horrible way, because it shows how diseased Silco's mind is, that he thinks that this is something that would be like a good thing, that's something that should be done to someone else. We talked about this. We talked about this back in episode 3. Like, Silco talked about how nearly being strangled to death and drowned was a baptism. He actually uses that word, by the way, a baptism for him. He is 100% a true zealot. Completely toxic to himself and anybody he cares about. It is clear he cares about Powder. It's just, you know, he's also actively trying to kill Powder. That is to say, Powder, not Jinx. Even says that once again, outright. Yeah, he does. This guy needs help. Just, yeah. No, this is kind of disturbing and awful. And this then, sorry, you asked me something about this, Salvacom. Oh yeah, this is then interplayed by the next scene we see Jinx in. She's actually starting to work her way through. She's actually starting to work her way through her issues, and doesn't seem to be afraid of working on the gem anymore. So now she's coming up with all kinds of things with this monogem. Cool. Yeah, she also hung her buddy. Yay. Meanwhile, so there's the song from the intro. Everybody wants to be my enemy. I think the only thing that really applies to is Jace. It does. I'll agree with that. But other than that, I think it's mostly just a reference to the song. Although the song itself is certainly interesting, and I was listening to the lyrics on this one. I still haven't watched the intro. I think I'll actually bother to watch that next week when we cover episode 7. I guess that would be. We also cut to Shimmer being used. So it was obvious earlier. They showcased this with the Shimmer thing. Shimmer is far more recreational now, or there's a variant of Shimmer that's more recreational now. And we also know it has at least some medicinal properties. I wonder what other things they've already figured out what to do with Shimmer. We also cut to Marcus, who is just guzzling, drinking, staring at the bomb, and, of course, right next to it is the picture from his daughter. Marcus is trapped in his post. Powder is trapped in her own head. Vi was trapped in prison. Caitlyn is trapped by her family. Jace is trapped by politics. Mel is trapped by her family. This is, I think, the dominant theme of this particular arc. Everybody is trapped by their own things, whether they be tangible or intangible, and everyone is trying to struggle against those, because every single one of the characters I just mentioned does not want to be where they are. They want to be free from what it is that imprisons them. Yeah, everyone's trapped with classism. That's just everywhere. But you'll notice I didn't mention one character in that list, and that's because the very next shot is of Victor in the hospital, who's trapped in his own body. So Victor is dying, lore shock. The best part is he asks how much time he has, and the answer is, we don't know. They don't actually answer that. This cuts to a really good fight scene. One of the better ones we've seen so far, between Twitface and Vi. Just, yeah, you notice Jace was right there. Of course he was. Of course he was. So we start with a really, really good knee shot to Twitface's face. We also see that she does have an arm. I'm never going to remember her name because I don't care about her. She's a terrible person. So Twitface actually has an arm. Nice steampunk, awful, wonderful thing here of having an arm. And, okay. It also is doubly interesting because it's Shimmer powered. Okay, I'm with that. Usually I dislike it when fights like these use slow-mo. Part of that's because of overusage of slow-mo, but part of it's because I can keep up. You don't need to slow it down for me. Nevertheless, they do use some fairly good usage of slow-mo here to emphasize some of the impact of some of the specific shots. There's some really good camera movement, there's some very good choreography, and it's a very, very dirty and brutal fight. In fact, it's doubly interesting because Twitface actually needs multiple shimmer injections to keep up with Vi, and still loses. The only reason that Vi loses here at all is because she has the shock moment of finding out about Jinx, who is working for Silco. At which point she gets a jab to the gut, so that sucks. However, just before Twitface can actually go for the thing, Caitlyn manages to shoot specifically the shimmer injector. Can I just say, nice freaking shot. Actually, then she gets like 2 other very good shots. And I have to admit, the scene where Caitlyn's trying to get her out of there, it's like, I have a name, but you're so sweet. Like a cupcake. That actually caught me. And yeah, very deliberately not killing. Which, yeah. And yeah, I also noticed the handoff there. Did you catch it? Vi's motivation, her morale meter, if you will, was filled up by powder. Whatever she does and whatever she accomplishes is acceptable to her mentally. So all of the damage she suffers is irrelevant because she's going to beat Twitface in order to then be able to find powder. The moment that prize is taken away from her, she loses all particular will of fight and immediately loses. You notice she doesn't even fight back as she's going for the killing blow. She just sits there and stares at her. It is Caitlyn who then saves her and rescues her and then offers her that morale meter back. It's a very nice handoff. Naturally, Twitface immediately goes to let Silco know. And this is the first time Silco lets the mask slip in the entire work here. These 2 episodes, I should say. He actually, like, he's doing the big, I'm the big, powerful thing that he's been doing this whole time. Until he hears that Vi's back. What? And there's some actual, honest-to-God shock there. Cut to credits. Yeah, that's the other thing. Sorry, I should mention this. The very idea here is that Marcus probably told him that Vi was dead. Nope. What do y'all think? I'm seeing some opinions in chat. I've been stuttering a lot today. I apologize. I'm actually kind of torn on this, but the mere fact that I'm torn means it's red. That's more or less how that rule works. But yeah, only red? Nah, come on. This goes back to something I've talked about a lot. Red, I feel the need to keep defending this. Red is very, very good. Red is up there. You gotta work at it to get to red. Right? Yeah, red is defined as great. Yeah, red is 9 out of 10. That's solid. I know that you're looking at Andor over there, but like, look, have you seen Andor? It's not my fault, okay? It's not my fault. I didn't ask for this. It also highlights one of the reasons why I prefer the golden number system instead of doing a 1 out of 7. Andor is a rarity. And I was legitimately shocked by Andor. I really was. Something like Clone Wars Season 7 there, that's a normal show right there. Orange, 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 red. Green, green, blue, green, red, purple, purple, purple. That's a lot more like what a typical good show will look like. An actual typical show will probably be yellow is the ceiling, but we probably won't cover shows like that. Until we cover Donkey Kong. Or Cyberpunk. I've been being told by a lot of people that Cyberpunk is not going to be super great. Yes, that is correct, Lord Harriman. Every Monday morning for the next couple of years, the Streamations are going to be going live on YouTube. Next episode, Season 1, Episode 6. When these walls come tumbling down. I'm going to go ahead and take my lunch break now. And then I'll go ahead and watch the episode. And then we'll come back.